So for this exercise, we'll be doing a two-point perspective. And a two-point perspective is very much like a one-point perspective. It follows the same basic rules, with the obvious difference being that instead of one vanishing point, you'll be using two vanishing points. So basically, the rules stay the same, except in the way that you set up the vanishing points. But you follow the same sequence of steps as you do in the one point to set up the perspective. So the first thing we have to do, well, the very first thing you have to do is, of course, decide what you want to see in the perspective. So I'm using the same plan that we used previously. So I, again, want to see these three walls and the table and the rug in the middle. Now, oftentimes in a two-point perspective, you'll just see two walls. So that's an option too, but just so that you can see how to do it, we'll do three walls. So in order to do three walls, I can't rotate the plan very much. You'll notice that this time the plan is rotated, whereas the previous time these walls were aligned vertically. So we're still using the plan projection method, also known as the pull-down method, but we're using a variant of it, which would be called the rotated plan method. And it's called that simply because you're slightly rotating the plan. So, as I said, you don't want to rotate it too much. And then there are sort of rules of thumb you would follow about how much to rotate it. But for the purposes of this exercise, let's just rotate it 25 degrees. And for this, I'm going to use my adjustable triangle. And I'm going to set it at 25 degrees or 35 degrees. It would be the same. And I would align the plan so that it lines up with that angle of the triangle. And of course, if I rotated the triangle this way, then that would line up like that. So either way you want to do it, but you want to set it at 25 degrees. So you'll notice that I've laid tracing paper over the plan and also down below, just like before. You'll notice that I have tracing paper over a much larger area of the drawing table, because with a two-point perspective, you actually need a lot more room than you would in a one-point perspective. So what we'll do next is set up the station point. So remember, everything that you want to see in the perspective has to fit within the perspective's cone of vision, which is 60 degrees. So an easy way to do this would be to just come off the inside edge of the room there at 30 degrees using your 30-60 triangle, and the other direction here. And where the two lines come together will be our station point. Okay. Now, the next thing you would want to do is to set up your picture plane. You can literally put the picture plane any place you want. It's best to put it at an inside corner. So we have four inside corners: here, 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 and here. The further back you put the picture plane, the bigger the perspective will be. So I'm going to just, for the time being, I think I might want to put it here. So I'm just going to draw a light line. That may change. The next thing we want to do is establish our vanishing points. Now this is where two-point perspective differs from one-point perspective in terms of how you set up the vanishing points. For the one-point perspective, we just pulled straight down from the station point. But with a two-point perspective, what we have to do is you have to align your adjustable triangle with one edge of the plan and draw a line from the station point parallel to the plan, okay, up to the picture plane. And I'm going to do it in the other direction also. So I'm going to align my adjustable triangle with the edge of the plan, and then I'm going to draw a line parallel to the plan, starting from the station point, again, up to the picture plane. So I can see that this will fit on my drawing table. If it didn't fit on my drawing table, then I might want to move the picture plane down to here. I actually have a little more room, so it's quite conceivable that I could put the picture plane up here and take these up. And if you have room to do that, then you might want to do that. But let's just do it this way for now. So the next thing you would want to do is draw your horizon line. So I've just drawn a horizontal line a little below the station point. The distance isn't important as long as it's comfortable for you to draw. The next thing I want to do is draw whatever is on the picture plane. In this case, we have this back inside corner. That's on the picture plane. So I want to pull that down, and that will be the only thing to scale. And that will be your true height line. Okay, now a very important point. The true height line will not always be at this back left corner. It depends on where you put the picture plane. If you put the picture plane here, then this is where your true height line will be. If you put it here, this is where your true height line will be. Here, this is where it'll be. But because our picture plane's here, this is where I'm going to put it. So the next thing we want to do is establish the height of our horizon line. So as before, I'm going to do it at 6 feet. So I measure 6 feet down from the horizon line, and that sets the horizon line at 6 feet. That'll be the bottom of the wall. And another 3 feet if we have a 9-foot ceiling. Okay. So back to the vanishing points. The reason that I did this is because where these lines, these two lines parallel to the plan, where they cross the picture plane, I'm going to come straight down. And where those vertical lines cross the horizon line will be my vanishing points. So I'll have one vanishing point there, and where this line crosses the picture plane, I bring it down vertically, straight down. That will be my other vanishing point. So all of the horizontal lines in the space will be going to one or the other vanishing points. All of the lines in this direction will go to this vanishing point, and all the lines in this direction will go to this vanishing point. So I have everything set up the way that I need it to be set up, and now I can actually start drawing the perspective. So that will be my true height line, which is that line back there in the corner. And I'm going to need a fairly long straight edge. A metal straight edge would be fine. If you're using a T-square, then you could probably just use your T-square, but as long as it's long enough. So this is just barely long enough. So I'm going to start by drawing this wall, and that's going to vanish to that vanishing point. So I'm just going to draw two light guidelines. Okay, and that's going to be the back wall. Now, just as with the one-point perspective, you want to figure out where that wall ends. So you're going to project from the station point to this back corner, draw a light guideline where that line crosses the picture plane. We're going to come straight down. And that's going to be our back wall. Now I want to draw this wall, and remember this wall is going to be going to this vanishing point. So I'm going to project out. And I want to find where this wall ends, so I project up from the station point through that point up to the picture plane, and then down into the perspective. And then that will be that wall. Now, you'll notice that, unlike with the one-point perspective, my perspective and my plan are not right in the middle of the drawing board. You'll notice that everything's kind of pushed to the left. That's because I need a lot more room on this side of the plan to find the vanishing point, whereas I don't need much space on this side. So if you're rotating it this way, you will need to push your plan as far left as you can. If you're rotating it this way, you want to push your plan as far right as you can. So let's draw this wall. So I'll just project from the vanishing point out. Now you'll notice for the first time we have a vanishing point that's not right in the middle of the room. So what this means is one of the two side walls is going to be extremely foreshortened. So you'll get these very vertical angles there. So an easy way to find where that wall ends is to project a line from your vanishing point through this line here, and my straight edge is a little short, so I have to shift it over a little bit, over to that wall. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. Again, I'm going to shift this slightly to where the line where the wall meets the ceiling. And then I should be able to draw a line where the two meet. And they should meet perfectly. They're slightly off. There's some drafting error someplace. You'll probably want to try to figure out, if it's really off, you'll want to figure out where it is. If it's just a little off, you can just kind of fudge it a little bit. So when you look at this now, what you should see is you should be able to perceive a box as though you're looking inside a box. And you can see the two walls and the ceiling and the floor. And you can see it's a very different look than what we had with the one-point perspective, with this wall being extremely foreshortened because it's so close to the vanishing point, and this wall in which we're able to see a lot more clearly. So let's draw the doors, and we'll do it again just like we did with the one point. Project from the station point through this point up to the picture plane for both edges of the door. I'm going to lean in so I can see, and I'm going to project down. All right, and I'm going to do the other one. Now, even though this is a very wide door, you'll notice that it is going to be very foreshortened. Okay, so you have two lines rather close together, far closer together here than here, even though this is a wider door, because this wall is so foreshortened. So we have to now determine the height of the doors. So remember that we're measuring on the true height line, which in my case is right there because it's on the picture plane. So all of my vertical measurements have to take place on the true height line. So the height of the door is 7 feet. So I'm going to measure 7 feet on the true height line. I'm going to project forward from that point. To find the height of this door. Those are the sides I previously drew, and the top. And then I have to, in plan, I'm right here, and I want to get to here. So I have to go right across the back wall to the corner and then forward. So I do that here. Right across the back wall and forward, and that will give me the height of my door there. Okay, let's draw the thickness of this wall. So as before, project from the station point up to the picture plane. I bring that down where it crosses the picture plane. That'll be the vertical edge of the opening. And then I want to show where that wall meets the floor, so I vanish to my right vanishing point, both at the top, at the bottom and at the top. And then where those lines meet, I can then project out to draw the underside of the door head and the threshold at the bottom. And I would do the same thing for the other door. I'm a little bit short there, so if you find yourself a little short, what you can do is either get a longer straight edge, or you can just kind of improvise a longer straight edge by lining your triangle up with your straight edge and drawing it like that. And it's quite possible that you won't see the edge of that opening because it might be hidden. And it's going to basically be hidden, so I don't have to worry about it. Okay, and of course I would do the same thing up at the top. All right, so let's talk about how to do the windows. Again, we want to measure along the true height line, which in this case is here. So the window height and the cabinet height are the same. They're both 3 feet tall. So I measure 3 feet on the true height line. I'm here in the plan. I want to go across the back wall. So I do the same thing in perspective. To find the window openings, just like in a one-point perspective, I project to the picture plane. With a two-point perspective, sometimes you'll be projecting down to the picture plane, sometimes you'll be projecting up to the picture plane. So in this particular case, we are projecting down to the picture plane. I think I was maybe a little bit off on that one, so let me double check. Make sure that your lead is nice and flush with the edge of your triangle. And of course, make sure your triangle is nice and flush with the edge of your parallel bar or your T-square, whichever you happen to be using. And I'm going to lean in so I can see these points. And I'm just projecting them straight down from the picture plane. Remember, everything has to pass through the picture plane first. Now, one of the things you'll notice immediately, well, first of all, as with the others, you should perceive that these windows are all the same width. But you'll notice that if you were to actually measure them on the drawing, in the perspective, they're actually getting a little smaller as you move to the right. And that's because you're dealing with foreshortening, because you have 2 vanishing points rather than 1. Let's draw the cabinet. Again, same principle. You want to project out. From where the back of the cabinet meets the wall. So we're projecting out to determine the top of the cabinet. Then we want to find that point, or that point. Now, theoretically, you can do it on either wall, but this wall is much more foreshortened. So it would be better to do it on this wall, which is less foreshortened. So rather than find that point, I'm going to find this point. Okay. And where that vertical line meets that line I drew earlier, I'm going to project a line from the right vanishing point over to the other wall. And at the floor also. And then I'm going to draw a vertical line for where the cabinet meets the wall on the left. Okay, and you'll see that it's very foreshortened here because the wall is very foreshortened. This will, of course, be hidden because the cabinet is there. But that's the shape of the cabinet. So you would draw the thickness of the cabinet and the height of the base in exactly the same way as you did the 1 point, measuring on the true height line. Maybe I'll just do one of them just to sort of make sure you understand it. So I'll measure the thickness of the top. I could project forward, but it's so foreshortened here. I think I'd rather go along the back wall to this corner and then come forward. And then I project out. And across. And I would do the base the same way. I would also find the door openings the same way. I would measure 1.5 feet across here and project those points to the picture plane and then down to find the vertical joint lines between the doors. Let me just do the casings on one of the doors. Of course, it would be the same on the others. Just as with the 1 point, I'm going to measure 6 inches on either side. I will project up. And then down. To find the height of the casing above the head, I'm going to measure 6 inches above the door height on the true height line. I'm going to project across the back wall to this corner and then forward. And of course you would do it the same way on the other side and for the door, the window casings. Okay, and same thing for the baseboard. Measure 6 inches and then come across like that, just as you did for everything else. Okay, so let's review a little bit how you might draw the windows, which is basically going to follow the same principle as the 1 point, but there's a key element I want to make sure that you understand. First of all, I'm going to eyeball or measure with my eyes the width of the frame. So 2 lines very close together at the sides and the top, and a little bit taller at the bottom. I might mark it first. And after I do this, I would make sure that I look at my elevation and make sure that what I've drawn here matches what I have seen on the elevation. Okay. To find the center line, same thing as before. I draw an X through it, through the window. Where the 2 lines cross, I put 1 vertical line just to the left of the intersection, 1 just to the right of the intersection, and that gives me my center line, and I want to look and see that it's actually centered in the window. Okay, then to draw the 6 lights, again, you could measure the heights on the true height line and project across. A little trick would be to draw 2 horizontal lines. Remember, they must be horizontal lines from here to here. And then I'm going to divide that into 3 equal spaces. So I'm going to set my 0 here, and a number that's easily divisible by 3, like 6 here at the top. Then I mark off 1 unit and then another unit or increment. So you pull these lines horizontally across, and you can see that each of these 3 segments is equal. Now I would vanish back to the vanishing point. And I could do all 3 windows at the same time. And I do a little visual check and look to see that everything looks equal, which it does. And of course I would do the other 2 windows in the same way.